white stuff known as snow. Ugh, just go away already. It was here and there on different areas of the ridge walk as we traversed our way to the summit, which from here is about 1.5 miles from that first rocky knob that we landed on top of. The areas in the coals or the narrow trails that don't experience a ton of sunlight still had snow and ice packed down on the trail, so some sections were faster than others due to that, kind of expected at this point in the year. The traverse goes up and over 4 or maybe 5 various sized knobs before landing at the true Pitchoff summit, most of which you can see directly in front of you from each one. So it's always fun seeing where you're going and where you just came from. And some of these climbs between knobs are quick, and then some are longer with more climbing up and down from the coals. I am really vibing this walk from that first summity area as we make our way towards the other one here on Pitchoff. You're walking through the woods on slabs, and then you come out and you're back in the woods on the rock slab again. It's cool. And there's this one little rock cliff that you jump from one to the other. Literally, you have to jump. It's about a foot or two between the two, and if you fall down there, you're falling like 10-15 feet. It is no joke. So I wonder how that is in the wintertime. Probably a bit more sketchy in the winter or on a rainy day, but if you fall off that, you're in serious trouble. But I like that element, that little bit element of something could go wrong. After all, we are out in the wilderness. This is not Disneyland, nor should it be. A few of these climbs out of the col today had some sketchy areas, though, covered in ice, which made it more difficult than we hoped. But overall, nothing too strenuous. Just a few sketchy icy climbs and slippery slabs, but like any springtime 80K hike, that's to be expected. So the snow is melted for the most part on this mountain, but there's still some leftover thick snow and ice in the areas that don't see as much sun, like in the col or narrow parts of the trail. But some of them are a little tough to get up and down. Definitely still need spikes. Climbing this ice section here. And we're going nice and slow. And once again, trekking poles are an enormous help. And we're sinking. Things were looking great so far. As I mentioned, the trail constantly comes out to amazing views on top of all these mini summit-like knobs. And a lot of the trail along the ridge is a rock slab, so some portions make for quick, very enjoyable hiking. A great hike all around so far today. So we made it up to the top of the nub that we were just climbing. Got Moose and Mackenzie on our right, Whiteface. It's a nice big slab up top here. Tree covered, but the trail is a slab through the moss and the whatnot here on the summit. So nice views looking north on our right. And we're going to walk across and continuing our journey along this ridge. And most of the trail still has leftover snow and ice packed down, but it's not too bad. Climbing up is a thing, but once you're up here, it's no big deal. So far, so good. Making our way across Pitchoff towards the big boulder at the true summit, which I think we'll be at shortly. We carried on and kept climbing up, over, and down. Up, over, and down. And repeat. And around 10:30 a.m., after we went over our last rocky knob, we arrived at the giant boulder on top of the mostly wooded Pitchoff Mountain summit. We made it. 3,500 feet elevation, 2.5 miles, and almost 2.5 hours into this sunny, classic Adirondack hike. And we are now on the true summit of Pitchoff. It is about 10:30, so a little over 2 hours at a nice, comfortable, and leisurely pace. Coming from the east trailhead is, in my opinion, 1,000 times better than coming from the Cascade area trailhead. You have views constantly, way better views than anything even Balanced Rock will give you. I loved it, and you're walking along the ridge for a long time, so you're out exposed in those awesome views for quite some time. But we're here, and we're going to keep going up over the summit now, back down the other side over to Balanced Rock, and then back to the other trailhead to finish the traverse. If you do hike this mountain from the Cascade side and you're not doing the traverse, I recommend walking another 10 minutes or so along the trail past this summit boulder to another summity ledge that has great views and actually feels more traditional and more summit-like. It's more of the traditional type of place that you'd sit down and eat a snack and take in the views. We, however, plan to stop and enjoy our snack down at Balanced Rock, so more or less we only stayed at the true summit for about 5 seconds, looked at the boulder, and then continued hiking down the trail. From the summit, there are a few steeper climbs down, a couple 50-foot stretches or so, nothing major. But for the most part, the trail from the summit down the half mile to the Balanced Rocks is a nice, easygoing, gradual trail. For the most part. Doesn't take too long at all. The woods up here are still very heavy with spruce trees, and you can get some views through various angles as you look through the trees. Not a ton overall, you're kind of in the woods at this point, but it's a nice and gentle trail heading down. Not long after, we came to the junction for Balanced Rocks, now known as Penn Station. Okay, maybe it's not officially, but it's the new name Josh and I spontaneously declared this junction today. The junction is marked by a tree with a couple trail markers with arrows on the markers and some Sharpie written on them. Nothing too special, but the junction is kind of flat and has a little clearing vibe to it. We went left, and a couple minutes later we arrived at Balanced Rocks. A couple enormous 15 or 20 foot glacial boulders balancing out on this large rock slab, overlooking the high peaks and the town of Lake Placid, and it has some of the best views of the day. Well, it has the best views unless you come up from the East Trailhead, in which case if you do come up from the East Trailhead, it has some of the best views, but not the best views. So keep that in mind. The East Trailhead, I can't say enough good things about it. And we are here. There are the giant boulders and those big, nice views. There's Mount Van Hovenberg and the bobsled track. Looking down on so much out here. Fantastic. Balanced Rocks. Always great. It's a cool spot, though, here at Balanced Rocks, and definitely worth your time on this mountain, regardless which way you hike to the summit. Josh and I then took the obligatory photo of each of us jumping from one boulder to the other, the Pitchoff Leap, making it look like we're jumping over Mount Marcy in the distance between the two giant boulders, and then we enjoyed a snack. We both had a protein bar, and of course, a Snickers bar. After about 10 minutes, we saw our first hiker for the day, actually, as he was coming out onto the rocks just as we were leaving. We said our hellos, and then we carried on back to the trail. At this point, the trail does experience a good amount of steeper elevation loss, or gain, depending which way you're coming. And it's slower going hiking while the cliffs of Balanced Rocks towered to our left. We were about 1.3 miles away from the trailhead once we left the Balanced Rocks area, so not a lot of hiking left to do, really. A few steeper climbs down some very eroded trail that could probably use some trail crew love at some point soon. And then one stretch that we now nicknamed Rattlesnake Alley because it had that vibe that snakes would be crawling out from under all of these rocks. You know what it looks like, kind of just feels like there's going to be snakes everywhere. The majority of the climbs up or down Pitchoff are typically short bursts of steeper climbing. Up the rocks, grabbing roots and pulling yourself up. These stretches will certainly get your lungs and legs working for this mountain. Once off that final climb, down Rattlesnake Alley, we were in a small col-looking area at the base of some cliffs, and we were now finished with the steeper part of the hike. Off of the last kind of tougher, sketchier section, coming down, pretty muddy, a lot of rocks, it's slow moving, climbing down, steep. Pretty much right as you get to the bottom of that section, which we have dubbed Rattlesnake Alley, a lot of rocks. Sounds like a good spot for rattlesnake to be. You're into like a little col with the big cliffs right in front of you, or in our case, behind us. And now we're going back into the woods here to basically walk up high along Route 73 in a nice, gentle manner until we slowly make our way down to the trailhead. So it's a nice, easy walk out for the next bit of time. From here, we were just 0.9 miles from the trailhead, and this last mile is mostly light walking, a whole lot different from the first mile coming from the other direction at the east trailhead, that's for sure. Overall, it's a gentle woods walk back to the trailhead as the trail runs high up, paralleling Route 73 below, with plenty of views across the valley of Cascade and Big Slide and a few other high peaks through the now leafless trees. This stretch has a few cool ledges throughout just off the trail with great views, so you'll want to check those out as you pass them. They're just a few feet off the trail, you'll see them. At this point, we pass the second group of our day, a family with a couple of very well-kept white, very fluffy dogs. We said our hellos and carried on walking through the spruce forest that eventually turned into a hardwood forest as we weaved our way through the woods, slowly losing elevation as we make our way back to Route 73's Cascade Pitchoff trailhead. The trail eventually runs along some maple syrup lines in the woods. Shortly after we came to these syrup lines, we saw the cars on the road through the trees. The sound of the traffic was louder and louder. And then a minute or two later, we were back at the trailhead. We can see the cars, see the trailhead. There's the sign-in register, and there's the road. We are complete here on the Pitchoff Traverse. We have completed the Pitchoff Traverse. It is just before noon, 11:55, so we'll call it noon. We started at about 8:15 with some various stops along the way. About 3 hours and 45 minutes. Very nice traverse. Highly recommend going on this trail from the east trailhead. The almost 5-mile Pitchoff Traverse was complete. 3 hours and 45 minutes after we started. A great little traverse exploring a new trail on an old mountain that is now the way I will always recommend to anybody looking to hike this majestic Lake Placid peak. A lot of the mountains here in the Adirondacks have multiple trails up them, and hiking all the different paths up the same mountain is a great way to explore and find a new adventure on an old friend, while also spreading out your foot traffic. So, another win-win situation there. Now to go get our other car back at the east trailhead. Well, another successful day in the woods once again here on Pitchoff Mountain. I highly recommend anybody exploring this trail to make it a traverse if possible, but if not, I'd say to out and back it from the east trail. To me, it has the most bang for its buck from that end, and is also a trail less traveled, so you'll be sure to have a great time. Despite the 1,400 feet of gain over the first mile, of course. But thanks to all of you for listening to yet another episode here on the 46 of 46 podcast. Find me on Instagram or Facebook to stay up to date on new episodes and keep checking back every Friday for new mountains, new stories, and new episodes. If you have a minute to leave the show a rating and review wherever you listen, I'd greatly appreciate it. Remember to always leave no trace, do the rock walk, and if you carry it in, carry it out. Everything, every time, banana peels and all. See you on the trails.